to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. When you're trying to repair an important relationship, it's natural to desire cooperation and mutual engagement in the process. When there's a serious conflict, true friends will sit down and talk things through. Couples go to couples therapy together. Even strangers go to mediation or small claims court to try to obtain a fair outcome. So you might expect that if your adult child is unhappy with you, she'll join you in trying to work things out. But if your child is already estranged, that means she's decided not to do that. Estrangement is usually the last resort when someone doesn't believe that change is possible through talking things out. So if you're waiting for her to meet you halfway, you may be waiting much longer than you need to in order to get things moving in the right direction. On today's show, I'd like to offer you 4 reasons to move ahead without expecting your child to meet you halfway. Number 1, since you are the parent, you are in charge of setting the tone for your relationships with all your children. Yes, your estranged child is an adult and absolutely is responsible for his own behavior in relationships. But to you, he's your child. Ever since he came into your life, you've always set the tone for the relationship that you share. Your child is now an adult, but you will always be the senior adult in the room. You will never be equals, and in some ways, you'll always have more responsibility for the relationship you share. And even though you might not feel like any kind of authority on how to reconcile with your child, you are nevertheless the authority. You're in charge. So it is up to you to study up and become an expert on how to fix things. There's much to learn about what goes wrong between parents and children and about the mistakes parents typically make in responding to an adult child who's pulling away. Mistakes that come from a lack of understanding of what went wrong and what's required to fix it. Just because you don't understand the problem at the moment doesn't mean that you can't come to understand it. But first you have to acknowledge that you are the captain of this particular ship, and it is up to you to steer your way to a safe harbor for both yourself and your adult child. You can refuse to take on the captain role, but if you do, you're giving up most of your power. And I don't recommend doing that if you want to solve the problem. The second reason to move ahead without waiting for your child to meet you halfway is that your child may actually have already tried to meet you halfway, and in doing so, perceived that you were not doing the same. And believe me, this could have happened without your even knowing it. Many estranged adult children say that before they pulled away, they tried hard to continue fitting themselves to the relationship when it didn't feel like a fit for them at all for various reasons. But ultimately, it was too painful to continue, and they had to choose between protecting their own well-being and taking care of their parents' need to maintain the relationship. All to say, don't assume your child never tried to meet you halfway, or even more than halfway, because he might have done that for some time without your realizing how much the relationship as it was costing him. Number 3. On this podcast, and in my book, Reconnecting with Your Estranged Adult Child, and in the Reconnection Club, I always try to avoid talking about what you or your child should do. I don't think you'll ever hear me say, you should do X, or your child should do Y. Should is not constructive. It only serves to place blame or to make people feel inadequate. You and I can talk all day long about how your child should cut you some slack, how he should give you a chance to explain your side of things, how she should put aside her grievances now that you're ill. But at the end of the day, where will that get you? Does it solve the problem of estrangement? Or does it just encourage you to think of your child as selfish, immature, immoral, or disordered? I don't see the value in talking about what anyone should do in the context of the sort of problem solving that we're seeking to do here. Instead, I focus in all my work on parental behaviors that are restorative versus parental behaviors that are potentially damaging. And it's all about increasing relationship-enhancing behaviors in the interest of making good, solid, permanent repairs, regardless of what your child may be bringing to the table currently. So in short, the word should is irrelevant in my opinion, unless we're talking about what you should do if you want a particular outcome. For example, if you want to lose weight, you should eat less. If you don't want that particular outcome, then there's no should. A fourth reason to take steps without waiting for your child to meet you halfway. Ironically, the more you take responsibility for creating a mutually satisfying reconciliation, the more your child might actually be willing, yea, even eager, to meet you halfway. Remember, if your child knew what to do to fix this situation, she wouldn't be estranged. But she couldn't fix it, so she exercised the only power she had to change things, which was to remove herself. But at the same time, it's not easy to be estranged from your parents. To have to say, I don't talk to my mother, or my father's a total and I don't even know if he's still alive. Nobody wants to be that person whose mother or father has been erased from his life. Chances are your child would prefer to have a healthy relationship with you. So if you can just begin the process of turning the ship around, if you can demonstrate to your child that you understand that some things need to change in order for her to be close again, then you just might find her showing up to meet you somewhere. Maybe not halfway, and maybe not as soon as you'd like. But the efforts that you make to learn what went wrong, to make needed changes, and to communicate in ways that feel less problematic or painful to your child will have an impact if you're consistent and sincere in those efforts. So again, those 4 reasons to move ahead without expecting your child to meet you halfway were, number 1, you're the parent and the captain of the ship. Number 2, your child might have already tried to meet you halfway without your knowing it. Number 3, it's not constructive to talk about what anyone should do because it doesn't solve the problem. And 4, your child might show up and engage in reconciling if and only if you take on a more active role in making repairs. If there's one very practical takeaway here, it's don't ask your child, can we find a way to make this work? Can we figure this out together? That question has already been asked and answered in the mind of your child, and the answer was no. So instead, you come up with the plan based on your understanding of what went wrong between you, and your child's part will be to let you know if that plan doesn't work for him. If you have no idea what went wrong or how to fix it, help is available at reconnectionclub.com and in my book, Reconnecting with Your Estranged Adult Child. Remember that even if your child doesn't want to meet you halfway or anywhere else right now, as a parent, you still have the power to change your relationship for the better. But the change you seek begins with you. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.